So he posits a world, and actually it's relevant at this stage because this is more or less where Iyov is holding, in which there's certainly a creator of the universe, but he is not active, not involved in our world in any meaningful way. And so suffering happens, that as it were, and it's hard to say this because it's not our view and it's heretical, but it's understood. They understand that Hashem, as it were, is out of control over the terrible things that happen to us here in this world. And that's a gross simplification. It is a whole book. He does have other ideas. You can't. When you criticize something that you don't like, you can't reduce it to something that it's not. So it is a book of intelligence, but it's certainly not based on Jewish ideas, despite the fact that he calls himself a rabbi and is writing about Jewish ideas, but consistent with his movement, he goes very far afield. Does that give you enough?
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk about Kushner so much here. I mean, somebody who's off base, so yeah. Welcome everybody. Shmuel, Yo, Fabian, Scott here. Good.
Hey.
I think there's background music and like one of you guys are like playing.
Right. We're a pretty large group, so anybody who has background music, but the truth is I have no choice. You're going to probably be hearing Bar Yochai Nimshach Shrecha. Everybody's quite thrilled. It's already Bayas Lag Bomer and nobody else. I can say that, and maybe Ari can say that too, but none of the rest of you can because you have to worry about counting your Omer tonight. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other random questions before we launch?
Yeah, Rabbi, I had a question. If you're comparing two scenarios, one putting on tefillin and just saying like Kadesh Li and Shema like after Chatzot, or two like putting it on like with Mincha around 4 o'clock, which is more ideal?
So I mean, what's underlying both ideas? You could do both. There's nothing contradictory doing both. The logic of doing it immediately is we have a principle of Zrizim Matim in the mitzvahs, which means if you're really enthusiastic to fulfill Hashem's mitzvahs, what are you doing sleeping through Shachris? Oh, I'm sorry. I can get a control of myself there. If you're really enthusiastic about doing Hashem's mitzvahs, so then, once you blew it already and missed your prime opportunity in the morning, so then you'd want to do it from the earliest possible opportunity, which would be Chatzos Yom midday. And so the logic is you would put on the tefillin and say Kriya Shema, even though the person doesn't get the mitzvah of Kriya Shema B'zmana, there is still a general mitzvah being Makabel O Malchut Shemayim, receiving the heavenly yoke. So people want to do that as quickly as possible. There's that principle, and then there's just you can call it Eitz Tova, good advice, which is that these things, if a person is not necessarily getting up for Shachris, maybe he's also not. He's the kind of person that might forget later on also. So while you're doing it, carpe diem, grab the moment, right? Because maybe Mincha won't come from such a mentality. The logic of doing it later on in Mincha is that there's another inyan, there's another priority, we would say, of at least davening Shmona Esrei once in the day, wearing your tefillin. So that's the logic of doing it later in the day. You're saying that you have to choose which one is a priority, which one would be better.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the person. I think if the person's at risk for not putting on tefillin at all in the day, you're talking about a mitzvah zaseh d'oraisa, then I would do it earlier. Just do it while you can, while you have the presence of mind. But if the person's pretty reliable and everything's gonna be good, so wait till you get a minyan and daven Shmona Esrei, and then you get everything in.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Good. Welcome. A few people are back after a little bit of a break. So welcome. I just looked online. This is our 11th session already. Who felt it, but I guess we've been doing it every night. So anybody wants to catch up, Eitan's been doing such a wonderful job for us and keeping everybody posted. You all know that tomorrow we're off, but we'll resume on Wednesday. So good. Okay, we're back on track. If you have any random questions, anything else you want to talk about, by all means. First of all, as always, I'm here for you. So if you want to schedule an appointment and we can figure out a time, want to go back and forth by email, all these are options. And I stay late if anybody wants to stay afterwards, should you have any issues. Yesterday we left on a cliffhanger, and I hope nobody got any sleep last night. Well, okay. All I did was I quoted the Medrash Rabbah, and that talks about nisyonos and what it means and what they are. And it gave three mashalim, three parables to play with. And I tried to give you food for thought. What I'll do right now, since a few of you were not here yesterday, which is fine. I'll review this. I'll ask for any input if you came up with any brilliant ideas, and then I'll make my own suggestions. Here they are. Again, the reintroduce the idea. Nisayon is really what makes up our lives. I'll say something that I didn't say last night, which is familiar idea in the Western world, which is we have a tendency to beat up because it's just so much fun. There's just too much you can't even begin to choose what to beat up. But one idea is the notion of nisayon, of being tested, is anathema, is something that's seen as evil, and it's something to be avoided. I mean, isn't it supposed to be a picnic, and we're all just supposed to party all the time, 24/7, indulge our desires, and have a good old time? And if that's not going to work out, well, then I'm going to sue Hashem, and you better pay me, dividends plus damages, right? So that seems to be the attitude. A nisayon then is an unwelcome intrusion on my life, and how dare anybody even, how could Hashem do this to me? Sort of an extension of Iyov's "Why me?" I think that the third chapter of Iyov, anybody who's not gone through it must read it. It's required reading, especially for the whiny, complaining type. I mean, you've just never heard anything like it. Again, poor Iyov, it's true, but he really does pour it on. He's not exactly passing this nisayon so well in the end. We can empathize, though. I mean, somebody endures such hardship and tragedy. Okay, it's hard to pass judgment, but we can, and we will. So on passing judgment, I have to make a comment, too. We're trained not to pass judgment. It's not fair. It's not PC. And there's something right about that. I mean, we have to be empathic to people. And we don't want to be like Iyov's friends are to him, not understanding. And there's a Isur D'Oraisa in this week's Parsha of Onos Dvarim. We want to be sensitive. On the other hand, we go through life. We are judgmental. We have to be, because I have to see if somebody's doing the wrong thing. I have to distance myself. I don't have to be nasty to the person, chas v'sholom, but I can say that's not the right way to be, and there's a better way. And if I'm teaching, or if I'm setting an example or anything like that, I have to say that's not correct. So yes, we can be judgmental. Back to the idea of nisayon and the Western world not preparing us for this. The idea of running away from nisayon. It ill prepares people for when inevitably they come. I mean, because we understand that's what life is. And we could probably all brainstorm examples all around us of people who are not coping with the current crisis admirably, right? So part of that comes from this training, this anti-nisayon attitude that dominates, again, much of the spoiled Western world, right, where it's all supposed to be a picnic. A Jew, in contrast, basic assumption, we recognize that life is filled with them, and our job here, really what characterizes our time on this planet, is being tested and trying to rise to the various tests. Sometimes that's excruciating. Okay, what are you going to do about it? We also said a major principle, major corollary, that Hashem doesn't send a test, doesn't test anybody with anything that they're not capable somehow of rising to. Okay, sometimes you hear of the challenges. I mean, we can all think of stories. We know in history too what the ordeals the Jews have been through. But evidently we all have the means to get through them. Okay, the Medrash, in talking about nisayon, we talk about nace, the flag, something that signifies a person, much like if you flag an email, right? So what you're doing is you're giving it distinction. You're making it stand out. That's what nisayon does. It draws out our innate qualities, brings out the real person. Remember, of course, that's what the Satan's charge is in this world. He's there to put tricks, traps, and other kinds of obstacles in our way to test us, to see, really what we're made of. Are we all that we try to appear at? Are we everything that we try to appear as? So the three different models, we'll go through them each one at a time, and maybe if anybody has any ideas. The first is the notion of a seller of pottery who is hitting the pottery as a nisayon. From that perspective, what do we understand? What is nisayon doing?
Demonstrating strength.
Yeah, good. Here's a nice product, ma'am. You know, I want to try it. Doing, doing, doing. Right? It looks terrific. Right? So that's a very straightforward notion, right? Demonstrating what you're made of. If you didn't have this nisayon, who would know what you're capable of? We all have these experiences where you go through some kind of experience, it tests you, and it actually elicits a certain quality. And wow, I didn't know I could do that. I remember that feeling for myself. I remember first being a camp counselor. Talk about that a lot here. But for me, that was a defining kind of experience because I worked really hard as a camp counselor. There were a lot of challenges, a lot of bratty kids and whatnot. But I was able to rise to a lot of it. And at the end of the summer, I look back, wow, I never saw myself in that capacity. And I had a whole new self-definition as a result of that. Okay, I'm capable of doing this. Okay, so in the brightest possible light, Ed, and welcome, in the brightest possible circumstances, and nisayon on some level makes us what we are in ways that we wouldn't know without the nisayon.
All right, Rabbi.
Yeah, hi, Ed. Okay, so that's one quality of nisayon. Anybody want to add to that? Subtract from it? Second idea of nisayon, somebody's going to say?
Question on the idea. So it's a
Yeah.
demonstrating strength to, because we see that with Iyov's nisayon, that Hashem is essentially saying, in a way, less to show Iyov what he's made of, more to show the Satan what Iyov's made of. So is there a division between showing the person versus showing, so to speak, like the actual character of the person, like to prove to the Shemayim?
You're saying that there may be, I'm not sure I get what you're saying, but maybe there's a difference between showing the person, let me try, showing the person himself what he's capable of, or alternately, maybe the person's clueless about what's going on, and in fact, it's all for Hashem.
Right.
And maybe the person never even realizes it. Is that your question?
Not that the person doesn't realize it, but that when we're saying to prove the toughness, it's not to prove the toughness to the person, but to Hashem, or to
Right. Okay. Okay. So irrelevant if the person does, but the goal of it might be to demonstrate who we are to Hashem.
Right.
Sure, that's a quality. I think we might find that in one of the other definitions in the Medrash, but both are possible. Both are possible, and at the end of the day, Hashem judges us for who we are, and we have many innate qualities that Hashem is trying to bring out in us. We'll talk about later in the book one of the major. I don't know if I want to give this away. It's fantastic what's coming, but the whole notion of reincarnation, from a Jewish perspective, is very much along these lines, that we're each put in this world. This is a Kabbalistic attitude. We're put in this world to accomplish something or some things, and it's a wonderful way. I mean, again, you remember that there's a minority view that reincarnation is not a Jewish concept. The overwhelming consensus is that it is, and we're going to learn that the Ramban proves it from Iyov, no less. But regardless of whether you hold by it, you don't hold by it, but consider the notion of reincarnation, what it means. It means that Hashem clearly sees greatness in each of us, sees that we have potential, holds us to a task that we're supposed to fulfill. Many of us fail. We don't quite rise to the occasion, and reincarnation introduces the idea of a second chance, or third chance, or multiple chances, that we have unique qualities that we're meant to offer, and maybe we can do something in this life. And that sounds very much along the lines of your second option, Eitan, Hashem's waiting for us to really do our thing. What's so challenging and frustrating, but ultimately something that we have to be focused on, is what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What's my contribution to this world? Something that's sort of an elusive question that we struggle with in the contemporary society, which I'm going to pick on again. So much of it is career focused, since the values are monetary. So people try to figure out, well, what do they want to do in their career? And it accounts, this confusion and this constant search accounts for a lot of career shifting and midlife crisis, where people feel, well, this can't be what I meant for, I've got to find something else. Career is certainly something, I don't mean to diminish it altogether, but it can only be a piece of the puzzle. We have hopefully far more important things to do in this lifetime, and we're supposed to figure that out. The simplistic way, of course, how do you figure out what you're supposed to do when you grow up? I'm still trying to figure it out myself. When I get it to be an adult, I try to figure that out. Meantime we can play around. When we come of age, we're supposed to assess what that is and then do it. How do you know? Well, that's one of the reasons why learning Torah is so essential, because the only way you start to really get to know yourself is by learning. The Torah is a reflection, it's a blueprint of our own neshama, and it brings out certain qualities that we may not even be aware of, and it helps raise the consciousness of, okay, this is something I should really do. Second metaphor, second mashal of the in the Medrash that defines for us what Nisayan is about, similar to the first, but importantly different. We meet a rug seller who hits the rug. Again, it seems to demonstrate, to show prospective customers what the rug is made of. What is unique about this quality?
Don't people hit rugs to like dust them off?
Ordinarily, that's true, but you must, Davi, not be Persian. Am I correct in my assessment? Because you would know, but quality rugs if you were. You and I, of course, beat the rugs to get the dust and schmutz off. We have endless amounts of that. But I'm saying when it's a new rug, you still might beat it, but for a different purpose. What does it accomplish?
Does it level it out, make it like more even?
Make it more what?
More even, more level.
Yeah. There is an idea. I mean, we're so removed from the earth and the high-tech society. We don't really know how this goes, but there are qualities and materials in the rug. Let's say a classic rug made of pishtan, which is flaxen, that the more you beat it, actually, the more you bring it out to a fuller strength, right? Where the first one shows its durability, it can take a beat, it can take a licking and keep on ticking. I think that was which watch company was that an advertisement for? Right? That this demonstrates and publicizes. That's the first idea. In the second idea, it's actually bringing out more than was ever there in the first place. It's elucidating and it's showing its full strength. I realize now that my camp counselor illustration might be more fitting here, because there I found that I had untapped resources that suddenly came out, and in a crisis, in the best way, you can see that. Some of the inspiring stories that come out of the show were precisely this, that under duress, people became wonderful. And when would they have had the opportunity without that? The Ramban uses this second idea, that the beating the rug actually makes the rug better. He uses this in his explanation of the Kedes Yitzchak, that when Avram Avinu went through really all of his 10 tests, this extraordinary test, it actually brings a person's potential to its full fruition. And without this, he would not have been Avram, right? Without these tests, we would not be ourselves. So in contrast with the idea that a test is evil and I suffer and it's awful, actually a test is a great chesed from Hashem. It's a gift if I know how to rise to it, because without which I may never have discovered my inner resources, my inner greatness, my spark.
Yeah, just to follow with that, Rabbi, more used Persian rugs are actually more expensive. So it's like it follows the same
Oh,
point that you said.
fantastic, Ed. That's great insight. Yeah, right. Okay, so that really does reinforce this.
Yeah.
Or I should say that strengthens this argument and actually brings it to its full fruition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for that. Okay. Okay. Anybody, and do you know this from personal experience?
Yeah, I know from personal experience, it was actually like a recent subject, like last Shabbat, my dad and
Had it
I
come
spoke
up?
about it.
I mean, your family's Persian, obviously, but they dabble in the rug industry?
No, it's like a consensus thing, I'm pretty sure, among Persians, but it came up because we were speaking about someone within the Persian community that used to sell rugs, and then my dad just like mentioned that. And so, yeah, like I'm pretty sure it's like if Persians, because they're more into rugs, it's like a known consensus. Like if they're more used, they're worth more.
Wow. Do you ever meet somebody who's been through ordeals and maybe even almost superhuman ordeals, and they're just super duper human beings? Sometimes, I mean, almost, I don't want to say an absolute generalization, but people who have severe handicaps, and you meet them and they're fine and they're refined and they're put together, and they have a certain wisdom to them that comes of this, that again is not despite their hardship, it's very much because of their hardship. They come out really on top, stronger than ever. They're more in control, really, because, you know, it's not really our wealth or our physical prowess that puts us in control. It's our ability to rise to our challenges that really shows our true strength, our true greatness. The third image, and these are all overlapping, but consider, third image from the Medrash was that a donkey carries, he's the ultimate beast of burden, and he carries the greatest burden. And this could be true, I didn't say this last night, but this could be true even if the burden falls on the way. We have famous mitzvahs in the Torah that talk about this, that what do you do if the donkey's burden falls off of it, to help your enemy before your friend, and a number of other important ideas. But what is this third and slightly distinct idea trying to elucidate about nisyonos?
That they kind of put a person back off the beaten path, no pun intended.
Yeah, right. They can. Nisyonos can often throw us completely off, throw us for a complete loop, and really often, you see this too, they can derail your life's plans. You had a whole vision of how it's supposed to unfold, and this Nisayon comes. I mean, look, isn't that what's presently happening in the world too? Everybody had their businesses and their lofty ideals, and I had a whole plan I was going to do during the summer, guiding and working, and of course visiting America, seeing all of you, and visiting my parents, and okay, Mensch tracht, right? We get derailed, and okay, but Hashem runs the world. Anybody else that want to say before I launch into my? I try to hesitate before I give you what I've found on this, because then it's going to impede your contributions afterwards. Anybody want to say something? Good. Okay, so on this idea, of course, the greatest beast of burden faces the greatest nisayon and comes out the strongest. And again, even though he might fall along the way, right, that's part of the package. The Ramban elaborates this. He has a book. It's a great book. I don't know if we've quoted it so much. We'll be quoting it extensively in our discussion of Iyov. It's called Shiur HaGemul, in which he addresses many of these and other deep issues. He points out that in the context of life, as we see, everybody gets nisyonos. Everybody gets nisyonos. That's just what life is. And we see some people pass, some people fail, and many of us are somewhere in the middle. We pass some, we fail others. Even when we fall, if we get back up again, as painful as that is, and as humiliating as that sometimes is, that may have been the point altogether. Meaning sometimes we're supposed to have this immense failure and fail the Nisayon, but that's not the Nisayon. It's after the fact, our ability to be resilient. That's what saves us. That's what redeems us. Anybody know the pasuk that I'm thinking of right now? There's a very famous pasuk that illustrates this.
Tzadik sheva yipul v'kam.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Thanks, Ezra. Yeah, what does it mean? You want to elaborate?
Yeah, like, you know, we
Everybody
kinda have
listen
this-
carefully. If this is not a familiar idea, this should be part of your basic Jewish vocabulary. Gavi, welcome. Ezra, go ahead. Take it.
So we kind of have this natural tendency to look at success as like a very linear path where, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, great, you're on the top and everything is peaceful and, you know, kind of utopian, and that's how life should be. Well, like, in Judaism, we kind of have a totally opposite approach that in order to, you know, like a tzaddik, a tzaddik is somebody who's doing the right thing. You know, he's doing all 613 commandments, right? That's a tzaddik.
Ezra, speak one notch louder and clearly. Enunciate better, because you're saying important words. I don't want anybody to miss them.
Okay, sorry. So a tzaddik is somebody who he does the mitzvahs. You know, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. But this saying tzaddik sheva yipol v'kam means that a tzaddik falls, like he fails 7 times and then he gets back up again, right? And like that's like a huge part of our lives is failing, and like don't let it throw you off.
Right. There's a
Like
person who probably illustrates this best or better than anybody in history. Who comes to mind when we talk about this?
I don't know, Yehuda maybe?
That's exactly who the person is. Yehuda is exactly that figure. If you track his life, he is an abject failure. I mean, just picture him with Tamar, and you just, you know, what an excruciating humiliation that was. He's got to stand up and say, Tzad Kamimeni, and everybody says, oh, Yehuda, Yehuda, Yehuda. What you've been
wasn't
through.
that not his fault, though? Wasn't that, like,
Oh,
orchestrated?
fine. No, but he totally owned up to it. Fault or no fault. No, we're not talking about blamelessness here. You know, tzaddikim are human with the rest of us. The difference is that they're capable of fessing up to it. They're capable of owning their problems and saying, okay, I made a mistake. You know, how many politicians in recent history got up and said, I was wrong, I made a mistake, I have no excuse for my behavior?
None.
It doesn't happen. My favorite was, I mean, this is already a decade ago, maybe more. Hillary got called out for something or another. I remember she said, she was caught in a blatant lie. When she was called out on it, she said, yeah, I misspoke. Okay, you know, however you want to live with yourself. But Sheva Yipol V'Kam indicates that people actually recognize that failure is not the end, it's the beginning. And that it's actually a terribly important vehicle to learn, to grow, and to become the ultimate tzaddik. I mean, I emphasize this too. Did any of us do Ulpan together? I haven't been teaching Ulpan in some years, but Eitan, you were in my Ulpan. I don't know if anybody else was who's here. But I don't know if you remember, that was one of my mottos in teaching Ulpan. I said, you know, flail, make it fool yourself here, embarrass yourself, you know, speak the heaviest accented Hebrew. And just, you know, because you'll learn through your failures. I say the same thing, almost everybody, oh no, not everybody here, but a good chunk of you were in my Gemara Shiur. And that was the way, that was my motto in Gemara too. Just flail, put your, you know, go 3 feet forward and you know, embarrass yourself. If you can't make a fool of yourself here, where can you? And you actually get a tremendous amount out of your failings. That's why I gave my test that was so hard. Then okay, so then you got to rise to it. So that's how the Ramban develops this idea. It's in the Shar Gmul. He talks about it. One day maybe you want to look it up and read it for yourself and not take my word for it. As with everything else, I hope that, you know, a lot of the things we talk about are not the end of the line for you, but the beginning of the path and the search. Every Nisayon has a purpose. And again, especially in a sense, those that you felt that you just didn't pass. Well, do something about that. Learn from it. Draw conclusions. That's what a Jew does. And the idea of falling 7 times, just keep getting right back up again. You fall off a horse, get back on. That's what every equestrian knows, right? If we didn't do this, life would otherwise be cruel and pointless. It's just a bunch of masochistic tests that we just can't pass, and we don't pass, then Hashem is torturing us, like a cosmic chas v'sholom, not like, can't picture such a thing, but he's conveyed this way frequently, as a cosmic horror movie villain. He takes some kind of delight and pleasure watching us writhe down here in our own agony and our own failures. But that's the opposite of our view. Hashem is a Rachaman who loves us and wants good for us, and he's rooting for us, right? The purpose is not always evident in the short run. We've got to see in the long term that there's a purpose here. It wasn't just Yehuda. Really, this quality we see is characteristic of Yehuda's descendants, pointedly with David's failure with Bathsheba and others. But they make tshuva, they come back. And that's what's so encouraging about all this. And that's, again, the long term, that's the point. Okay. Take out your Iyov. Any comments, any thoughts on any of this? Good. Okay, let's take out Iyov for a moment. We're at the 3rd chapter, but I can't I just want to go back a little bit we're in the 3rd chapter. We're about to go into the 4th. We saw what the Rambam defined as a watershed. We saw the 19th pasuk. Iyov is having a hard time of it. This world is so painful. He believes in Hashem's goodness, but he's weakened by his experience. He's not an example of passing in Nisayon as we've just described. And if you read the last couple of psukim, let's just look at 24 and 25. We'll do it in English. Look at Iyov's fragile state of mind. He says, "For I was greatly frightened, and it had overtaken me. That which I dreaded has come to me. Never did I feel secure, never quiet, never at peace. And now I feel torment." I don't know why this resonates so much for me. I now think the reason is, I'm a therapist, and I empathize with my clients, and a bunch of them speak like this. The sense that they were never at peace. There was always something rattling up in the brain, always static playing up there, something always disquieting, even in their happy times. There's always this like pain in the back. And then when the bad times come, it's almost like a tidal wave that just overwhelms them of emotion, right? That's the feeling we get with Iyov, that something was always looming, lurking, and now it's just all come out in an avalanche. And he apparently doesn't seem to have the emotional wherewithal, emotional resources to deal with it. So there's a certain despondence, and he's been talking. There's not a lot of dialogue here. There's a lot of lectures, it would seem. The friends are there. They must be listening, and they seem to be dumbfounded. We don't see a lot of back and forth. Either that, or they're very proper Europeans and formal. And are you quite finished? Because now it's my turn. Well, meet Eliphaz. Eliphaz is the first of the friends to start talking, and he's going to start talking, that's for sure. And one thing about Iyov and his friends, they are talkers in the classic way. A little bit of introduction to Iyov. The Ramban summarizes, and I think this is helpful because I don't want us to get lost. I'm trying to hit some of the key points, and especially those of you who are taking notes, at least you should have a picture. What is Eliphaz's main thrust in his speech? He is coming, and this is consistent with the Ramban's approach in general, he's reacting to Iyov, and specifically Iyov's Aristotelian view. Again, Iyov feels that God is there. God created the world. He believes in God, but he feels that Hashem's not involved actively. And Eliphaz is directly honing in on that and challenging it. And his message is that Hashem is certainly there. He orders the affair of man, and he does it at the beginning and at the end and everything in the middle, meaning he is the voice of what we call Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence. Eliphaz, what do we know about the person? Now, with all of this, I hope people aren't taking this overly literally, because with Iyov of all books, we're all over the place and trying to understand it. So the opinion I'm about to quote is simply an opinion. It's not the only view. But according to the Zohar tells us that Eliphaz is the son of Esav. Rashi brings that too. Eliphaz is the son of Esav. And indeed, there is an Eliphaz, the son of Esav. The Chiddush here is that we're now identifying him as the figure that we see before us. I mean, it could also be that it's an Eliphaz that's not Esav's son. That's a possibility. The Zohar contrasts Eliphaz with another figure that we're not going to meet for a little bit of time. I've mentioned him before. His name is Elihu. He comes much later. And it's Elihu who is very sharp and very critical of the friends. And he criticizes the friends, not the content of their words. I mean, really, if you just take Eliphaz and his main idea, he's really saying the basic Jewish idea. Of course, we believe in Hashgacha Pratis. We believe that Hashem runs the world. So Elihu is not going to challenge that. He says that this is not a time for philosophizing, right? You should have been there for Iyov. And so it's the Zohar that makes this point. We've made it in the past as well, but I want to reinforce it here as well. We should keep this in mind. With all of this philosophizing, it reminds me of the idea that, you could win an argument and lose the entire point of the relationship, right? Sometimes it's an ego that needs to win the argument, but you forget what you're doing here, and there's a grander project. In this case, you're supposed to be there and comforting Iyov. And we derive from this that a person who wants to be menachem, wants to comfort his friend, must first collect his thoughts and think, what is my goal here? Right? I mean, it's so obvious, but people don't do this. You have to always think, okay, right now I'm doing a mitzvah. What is the mitzvah of the day? Tomorrow night I'm going to 2 weddings. They are, in my mind, not having been to a Corona season wedding, they are the most bizarre things I'm anticipating. But the way I'm trying to order my thoughts is, okay, how can I be there for my really close friends and be supportive of them in this time when you're making a wedding and you feel kind of alone? They're not going to have family flying in from anywhere. So it's important that you think, okay, this is the role I'm going to play. This is my function here. And then go accordingly, whatever situation you're in. And that's what we should do and neglect to so frequently. And Elihu is focused on this. Interestingly, we're going to see that Elihu and his words, he's pretty successful. And in fact, directly because of what Elihu tells Iyov, in response, is moved, is stimulated to thank Hashem and to accept Hashem's judgment. So that's great. Meaning, think about, your long-term impact on somebody. Is the goal to have a theological argument where you prove the other person wrong and you're right, so you can go home feeling good about yourself? Or, much more powerfully, and this is a great lesson for teachers and for parents, for anybody else, Rabbi writes about this in parenting. He says, you don't want to just blurt out what your child's supposed to do. You want to give him all the options and set the right model and set the stage so that your child can rise to whatever the challenge that he's facing and then and glow. And that's what Elihu does, and that's what we're supposed to do, and it's hard to do. An example of this also, I was trying to emphasize this. When you're learning in Chavrusa, my experience in Chavrusa is almost always one of the two is stronger than the other. So the tendency for the stronger of the pair is to blurt out the right answer. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Right? Are any of you guilty as charged? Right? The challenge, of course, is not to blurt out the answer. The person, if you just tell him what it is, he's not discovered it for himself. is to guide the person into discovering it himself. And that takes a lot more nuance and sensitivity, and of course is the ultimate goal. That's what we're doing in this world. So that's Eliyahu's rebuke, and that's something that we'll note now at the very beginning that Eliphaz is not doing in his words, and he attacks him with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. It's also derived from here. It's the halacha and Yoredeya. We've mentioned it before, that a person who's comforting the mourners is not supposed to speak unless he's asked to speak, unless the Avel speaks first. Now, here Eliphaz, and I'm going to read the psukim, actually speaks soundly. He's not angry. That's going to come later. But here he intends, he means good for Iyov. He's trying to show him the right way. Again, he's not subtle and he's not doing it so effectively. But he says, look, a man who experiences pain and comfort, who experiences sorrow but also joy, right? So if these people, they're alive. And, if a man's concern is integrity, right? And he's concerned about how he stands with Hashem, that's really what matters. Of course, suffering and all of these things, even good times are challenges. Everything is a challenge, Eliphaz is going to say. And if we try to prove our loyalty, we rise to the experience. Iyov is not going to take any of this well because he hears everything as a criticism. Such a human response, right? We're on the defensive, so we hear always that they must be somehow challenging me. Yeah, Eliphaz, the Medrash calls him a tzaddik. It's in the Medrash Torah writes about that. Yalkut Torah says he had totally disassociated from his father Esav. He went on a derech tovah. Let's see some of the verses themselves. We'll open up in the 4th chapter. Eliphaz the Temanite, that would mean he's Yemenite or otherwise, not always taken literally, responded to Iyov after obviously a lot of silence, and he spoke. Do you tire of one hurdle set against you? Meaning, Iyov, come on, stick with it, buddy. Don't give up, right? Mark well, you've chided many. You've been very critical, Iyov, steadying hands that were weak. Your words would raise the person who stumbled. You would brace buckling knees, meaning, Iyov, you have it in you to rise to these challenges. And here's a very famous pasuk we've quoted before. Actually, no, this isn't it. It's coming soon. Pasuk 5 says, so now do you weary when it befalls you? Meaning, you've been there to comfort others, Iyov. Don't forget that. Now that you're having a hard time, come on, Iyov. You have the wherewithal. You can do this. And then he asks, maybe you were overly frum. Wasn't your reverence, the fact that you had such reverence, maybe that was your folly. Maybe your hopes and also the constancy of your ways, maybe you're not always so intellectually honest, Iyov, right? You should remember, I beg you, who's innocent? Who's ever lost without a trace? Who are the upright ones who are blotted out? Meaning everybody gets what they deserve, Iyov. The lashon of that, and Chazal uses as the prototype of somebody who's violating onas dvarim. This is the verse that illustrates onas dvarim, causing somebody to suffer. It's anybody know the lashon? Zachorna mihu naki avad, right? Everybody gets what they deserve, Iyov, implying, Iyov, you're somehow deserving this. I mean, you hear this, and can you fault Iyov for taking this personally? Right? I mean, it seems to be a direct assault on his character. Okay. I'm going to skip. He says, during the ruminations of a night's vision, I'm at 13 if you're following. As slumber descends upon man, terror seized me, and trembling, Eliphaz is describing, it petrified the mass of my limbs. A spirit brushed past my face, the hair on my flesh stood on end. He stood, but I could make nothing of his appearance. An image was before my eyes. I heard a sound of silence. Don't think that's the root of Paul Simon's lyric, but it is a compelling pasuk. It's Tmama v'kol eshma, seemingly reminiscent of Eliyahu's encounter, the kol Tmama daka. And he describes a very human experience that Iyov must relate to. If you remember the 3rd chapter we described last night, these words sound very much what Iyov experienced, what a lot of us experience when we're powerless and suffering and terrified of what's outside. So then Eliphaz concludes and he says, can mortals be deemed righteous before Hashem? Could man be considered pure before his creator? Meaning if we're in this situation, it's because of our mortality. We have it coming. We bring it on ourselves. So then somebody else will say? Gavi, it looks like you're about to say something, no? So in the beginning of the 5th chapter, he says, remember the chapters are not, there's a division, but they're not always logical. They're Christian designation. The 5th chapter starts and says, cry out, I beg you. Will any answer you? To whom among the saintly can you turn? For frustration will kill the fool. Anger will slay the simple-minded. As for me, I saw a fool strike roots. He seems to be referring to Iyov. These are elusive kinds of psukim. There's a lot to make of them. Let me give you some insight from the Mefarshim. Look at the 7th pasuk. It's a famous one too. Ki Adam, it's actually arguably one of the most famous. I quoted a lot. Ki Adam la'amal yulad ufnei reshef yagbiu uf. For man is born to weariness. So our scroll translates it. Amal is a word that's very striking in the Torah. Anybody, does it come to anybody's, can you associate with anything in the Torah?
Mischief.
What's that?
Mischief.
Mischief?
Yeah, that's what the translation.
That's how they have it translated. It's also toil, suffering, struggle. Does it come up in anything significant that you know in the Torah? Well, you know what? It's it's in this week's parsha. Nobody saw that coming. Come on. We have in Baloscha, the second parsha, we have Bahar Baloscha. So Baloscha, we learn about the importance of Amelus. Amel, look at Rashi. Everybody comments on this. It's the go-to Dvar Torah for this week's Torah portion. So Amel is a very positive idea of hard work, toil, struggle in life, because good stuff comes out of that, right? And now comes Eliphaz and he tells Iyov, he says, this is what we're doing in this world. Adam la'amal yulad, right? And it's a nice summation of everything we were saying earlier of the Western world trying to evade any struggle or suffering. And chas v'shalom, if you have it, well then take a pill. Anesthetize yourself. Go get high. That's the only response. Or engage in self-destructive activity, so you don't have to deal with it. Or just run away, or fill your life with white noise. You'll always have music blaring in the back of your mind. That way you don't have to be alone in a room. This image of the sound of silence that was in the pasuk. How painful silence is for such a person who's always trying to elude suffering, always trying to run away from his problems. Right? So comes Iyov and gives him a big dose of truth, and he says, Adam la'amal yulad. Man is born for toil. Embrace it, Iyov. Run into your pain. Remember the metaphor from yesterday, the wheat versus the spelt, right? The stronger stalks were crushed by the hail, but the softer ones flowed with it more. Another metaphor that comes to mind that I use sometimes is who's from an area where there's snowy, inclement weather a lot in the wintertime? A bunch of you are, right? Some of you drive, right? So
Yeah.
When you hit a skid, what's your intuition? But then what is the right thing you're supposed to do?
Brake, but
You're
you're not supposed
keep your
to.
wheel straight.
Keep it real straight, but you're supposed to
Not press on the brake.
not slam on the brake. You're gonna
Right,
spin
but
out.
that's your
So what should you do?
You guide it with the
You should
steering
go
wheel and
against
don't
your
hit anything.
intuition and actually
just
steer
coast.
into the skid where you're going. Meaning you should embrace the pain and then try to accept it and do something with it. Grow, learn from your failures. The theme of the evening. and it's encapsulated in this gorgeous pasuk that Eliphaz articulates, Adam la'amal yulad, man is born for toil. And the end of the pasuk is another one with difficult words in Hebrew, but I'm going to say it again, so at least we should get the sound in our ears, maybe we'll wind up quoting it too one day. Ufnei reshef yagbiu uf. And it's translated here beautifully. While the spirits soar in flight, meaning if you can accept your very toil, your very hardship, you're going to soar, you're going to take off, you're going to become yourself, and you'll be more gorgeous than anything that could have come had you not suffered.
I think it.
Okay, that's, I think, a great note to end on. We'll take a couple days now and consider this and some of the other deep ideas that we talked about tonight. Any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I'm reading through the chapter 5. How it says like in English, like I myself saw a fool who had struck roots. Impulsively, I cursed his home. So is that supposed to mean that Eliphaz cursed the home of Iyov? Like prior to?
No, I think Eliphaz is very. This is the hardest book in the Bible, bar none, no competition. And so it's the psukim are worded in very elusive ways. You need to look at the commentaries for guidance. Our school's really good with this, obviously. But a lot of the time, Eliphaz's phrasing is he's imagining himself as Iyov. So some of the verses you need to read, like, this is what you're going through, Iyov, and it's him being empathic in the way that Eliphaz knows how to be empathic, and then he'll respond to it. As in, for example, this pasuk, Adam la'amal yulad, is a big response to this guy who's, trying to struggle to get to his roots.
Okay.
So you have to know in each verse, and he's constantly changing gears. Is Eliphaz speaking from his perspective, or Iyov's perspective, or sometimes he's speaking in a third person, objective perspective?
Okay. So
this is not, how do I say? Iyov is a lot of things. It's not exactly cinematic, right? It's not like you can film the Disney version of this very easily.
So I think I just need to get the art school version then.
Yeah, that might be useful. What are you using, Aviel?
This one.
It's the JPS. Yeah, that's not really gonna be satisfying.
Yeah.
And in any deep way, and of all books, Iyov, you need a really good guide. Our school's the best. All right. Great seeing you as always. I'd love to hear from you, and have a meaningful Lag BaOmer. Remember, nobody's making bonfires, at least not in Eretz Yisrael this year. But the real celebration of the Torah Sasod, this is considered the anniversary of the hidden Kabbalistic Torah that Rabbi Shimon elucidated and brought to light in the world, is of course to delve into his Torah. Something, you can have bonfires and listen to music for the first time since Pesach, but more profoundly, go open up some of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's Torah and delve into his secrets, and you'll come out a better person as a result. Have a meaningful Lag BaOmer, and I'll see you Bezrat Hashem in 2 days. And I'm hanging out if anybody wants to.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I have a question. How today's Lag BaOmer? How come we're supposed to wait till Wednesday to shave or get haircuts?
So that's brought down. There's a discrepancy between Ashkenazi Psak based on the Ramah and Sephardi Psak, which is based on the Mechaber. The Mechaber says that it's Ad Va'ad Bichlal, which is the Gemara way of saying that the 33 days was inclusive of the 33 days. So all the days were days of mourning, in commemorating the Rebbe Akiva's students. And then, therefore, the rites of mourning only end at the end of that, and so you'd wait for Lad BaOmer, the 34th day. According to the Ashkenazi understanding, it finished by Lag BaOmer, so Ad V'lo Ad Bichlal, so already on Lag BaOmer you can shave and listen to music and whatnot.
So it applies to music also that Sephardi and wait till Wednesday, or just.
I think that's true. You could check with a better authority than me. I'm also familiar this year. Whether you want to rely on this or not is your call. But Rav Yitzchak Yosef, who's presently the chief rabbi, the Sephardi chief rabbi, and the author of the Yalkut Yosef, based on his father's Piskei Halacha. So he paskin, especially this year, where people are suffering a lot with the quarantine and the economic prospects and the depression and whatnot, he said that people can listen to music under these circumstances to get them out of their depression. They should do it on headphones and not flagrantly and not break into raucous dancing. But he was very lenient about the music particularly. I don't know if everybody agrees with him, but I think a Sephardi Jew who's depressed, I'm not saying you are, I'm saying that that would be certainly something that a lot of people rely on.
Okay.
Ooh. Okay. Pregnant silence.
Okay, thank you,
Feedback
Rabbi.
about the class. Tell me, I'm going into more depth than I usually did or would. I mean, in Derech, I think such things would be deadly. The guys would be asleep by now, and maybe they are, for all I know. I saw a lot of people's video was off, so who knows what's going on behind the frame. My question is I could do this much more superficially and finish, but I'm enjoying myself. Which option do you think is better? Should I pick up speed and not go into such depth, not read so many psukim, or should I do it as I've been doing it?
I mean, I'm a fan of how you're doing it so far.
Great, good feedback. I mean, again, I don't know if this group is a representative sample of everybody who's been coming. You guys are the serious ones who stayed late, but I welcome feedback. Anybody else have an insight?
To be honest, it's interesting because now we finally, after a number of Shiur, we went from the narrative to the more philosophical stuff, and
Yeah, sure.
it's a very big shift, compared to it's just two totally different, I guess, limos, if that makes sense.
Well, it's less entertaining.
Right. So I would.
I'll make it more entertaining. I mean, I have a lot of meat to bring to this. I mean, I have what to add to this. I want to do a little bit. I'm not gonna do all 41 chapters. Trust me. But some of this is. I mean, some of these psukim are really quotable. If you see how it happens. You get certain ideas. Adam la'amal yulad. It becomes something that you draw out of your pocket, and it's an available idea that you hit upon when you see that life is so hard. Yeah, well, okay, that's what life is. That's what we're born for, and rise to it.
Also, I don't know why, but this is more of an Iyov question. But when I see the text of Iyov now, the thing that comes to mind is Koheles. I don't know, just the style of the structures of the sentences.
Oh yeah, nice, absolutely, because both are born of suffering and weariness. I mean, Shlomo's at the end of his life. Clearly, I mean, if it's been written as Chazal, at least one opinion, Chazal is medayek, that it was after Ashmedai had taken over his personality, and he's a vagabond begging for recognition. So he's also an extremist, and both are clearly, pondering our fate in this world, and both express profound wisdom. I mean, Koheles is the repository of some of the great wise statements. A disproportionate number of psukim find their way in Pirkei Avos. That's how significant Koheles is. But we're seeing also in Iyov similar qualities, right? So I think that's a very fair comparison. Great. All right, Freilich and Yat Lag Bomer.
You too, Rabbi. Enjoy the weddings tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Enjoy it tonight. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Mm.